Welcome to Never Rewrite. I'm Isaac Askew.
And I'm Jeffrey Sherman. And today we're rejoined by special guest Mark Mandau of Mandau Executives to discuss the question, or to ponder the question, where does the impetus for a rewrite come from? So welcome back, Mark. Thank you for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, guys. Had a blast last time.
For those who don't remember, and you should go back and watch the previous episode with Mark, but Mark comes from the question of rewrites from more the managerial and executive side, while Isaac and I come at it from more of the software side. And so today we're going to ponder the question of who and where did this idea that, it is so bad we need to do a rewrite. Because fundamentally, from where I sit, the idea that, we have screwed things up so very badly that we need to start all over is weird. Like if somebody came to Ford and said, you know what, this car factory that we've built that is making cars, it's so bad we're going to have to knock the whole thing over and build a new one. They would never let the people who built or ran that factory build another one. Even if they decided to do it, they'd be like, you guys are all out. But in software, that's like a regular thing. It's like, we've totally screwed this factory up. Let's build another one. So where have you found that the idea for a rewrite emerges?
Yeah, that's a great analogy. When it comes to hard assets, it's like, that's preposterous. Why would you knock down a whole building? Not saying it doesn't happen. Companies move operations for various reasons, right? And buildings do go dilapidated, but it's oftentimes complicated. It's usually workforce, talent, right? Cost structures, tax, et cetera, supply chains. But rarely is it like, hey, let's knock this thing down and build a whole new building in its place. There's something has to be fundamentally wrong. Like the foundation's cracked, or something terrible must have happened. And I think that's where analogy holds, right? Something terrible is happening. There's not enough maintenance. The thing can't support the people. It's too small, right? Size, scale, it's just not performing, or you can't take care of the thing. You fix 3 cracks and 5 more appear in its place. So I think rewrites are a Hail Mary sort of desperation move.
Yeah, that's always how I've kind of felt about them too, and from other leadership people that I've talked to. It feels to them like nothing else is going to work or has worked, so why not try this thing that I also don't believe in? But I've never heard, or maybe I have heard, but I don't remember. But to me, rewrites seem to come from 2 places: the developers or the managers. Right? It's either the developers say this code is so bad I can't support it, we need to rewrite it, or the manager of the developer says there's something so broken here, I don't think my team should have to do this. We should do something else, and this is the something else that I've come up with. But it's not. I mean, I guess as you go up in elevation, no CTO is going to be like, oh yes, the software I've got, I think we should rewrite it all because I've got this vision. Right? They wouldn't know that the vision. Would they?
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Well, I have, but it's in the response to something. So big asterisk. So disrepair really, I think, is the theme here. So when you have software that's not performing, it hasn't been taken care of, and the way that evolves, I find, is neglect of maintenance, not by the engineers, right? You get managers, you get individual contributors even that tell you, for a long time, what needs updating, what needs fixing, how do we make this better? Like, hey, it seems like, we're constantly running into, a too many user scenario or freezes, et cetera. So here's what we can do to get ahead of that. And I think what often happens, and this has been my experience, so I don't want to paint it, with too broad a brush, but what tends to happen is business says, yes, that's right, I agree, 100%. and let's work on that. But here's some high priority things that I need you to deliver tomorrow because that's what our customers are looking to do right now, right? And that always seems to be something that you sort of push off to the side. It's not you don't do it, but even, in terms of your backlog, whatever software you use, or even, post-its, Kanban boards, whiteboards, whatever you do, it's this thing that the the backlog itself goes into disrepair. You have tickets from a
Mm-hmm.
year ago that, like, okay, that this has been here, but we haven't worked on it, right? And then you have, good meaning people that bring a lot of process into, okay, let's close old tickets. And everybody on the team goes, well, we still need to do this. But we're not, why are we closing these tickets? But the reality is it just doesn't get taken care of. And so I think business priorities supersede what seems important right now, supersedes the long-term maintenance. And that's why there's a rough rule of thumb that I think gets uh, under sort of estimated. People say, well, we should be working 10% on, backlog stuff, and they don't even do that, right? They'll do like, 2%, 5%. But it's really on the order of 20%, right? Like one out of five things you should continuously be evolving, because if your business is moving, even if it's just humming along, there are things that you probably didn't include that you should have. There are cases that, although rare, they come up eventually, right? Once every month, once every 2 months, that you kind of hit your head like, oh, why didn't we do this sooner? There's this rule of um, I'm trying to remember how I phrased it, but there's this effect of, you don't know what's going to go wrong, but some small thing's going to go wrong.
Something, yeah.
It's the whack-a-mole, right? Like it's gonna pop up. Like you're certain it's certainly something's gonna happen, but you're not sure which of the small things is gonna go wrong. And usually kind of has a common fix. So that's the thing that I feel like the biggest unlock is you gotta put in the work to prevent the disaster of having to even consider a rewrite, and it just doesn't happen enough.
Right. A bunch of things you said in there really resonated with me. Like the 20% maintenance, that's assuming that you're in a good spot to begin with. If you're coming along and you're doing your 20% maintenance, you'll be able to hum along and do your 20% maintenance forever. But if you start deferring your maintenance,
Mm.
then suddenly it's like, oh, well, I only did 10% this month. It's not, oh, well, I need to do 30% next month. You probably need to do 40% next month because of the
Yeah,
extra wear and tear on the system because you didn't do the maintenance in the first place. And then, as it snowballs.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing you said that was super interesting to me was, developers and the people working the system, they do tell you, hey, we need to do this maintenance. And then the managers say, oh, or the leaders say, well, yeah, but we have these other things. Like going back to the car analogy, if they say, hey, we need to shut the factory line down for all weekend, and they say, well, but we've got a special order and the cars are selling really hot, so let's run the factory line all weekend and not do the regular maintenance on the machines.
yeah.
The machines are going to break, and no
Mm-hmm.
one's going to be surprised by that.
And it's a high
But
quality
then,
problem to have, right? So much
yeah,
business that you're barely keeping up. But that's where, you hear those stories like, hey, we scaled too quickly and now we had to shut down 200 locations kind of thing, right? This
mm-hmm.
happens in software too, in a sense where you just took too many customers on and you got too ambitious over your skis and your infrastructure couldn't support it. Now you're, dealing with a pending rewrite that isn't just 30% and 40% effort. This rewrite is now 100% maintenance, right? Because you're not building something that you're actively using anymore. You're trying to maintain your system that you've been using, and now you're building a duplicate system with an outsized number of engineers that's way
Mm-hmm.
beyond what the effort you would have put into maintenance.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great point. Of any rewrite, it begs the question of why didn't you do the maintenance?
Right? Absolutely. And just looking at it with, basic math, 100 is way higher than 10 or 20
Mm-hmm.
or 30. So it's kind of a failure of the imagination if you think about it. It's a failure to frame the problem correctly, because you almost don't know how much work the old system needs. And now you're saying, hey,
Mm.
but I scoped out this new system, and now your storytelling is kicking into gear right in your head. And the business team and the engineering team sort of conspire to tell this, fairy tale of like, hey, this is going to be wonderful. It's going to unlock all these markets. It's going to be so much faster than the old system. And to your point, why would you think that that new building is going to be so much better than the old one?
Well, there's two things there. Like, there's first is the fairy tale that by building a new one, we won't have to do all the maintenance, right? All the machines in the old factory are worn down, and if we build a new factory, none of the machines will be worn down because they'll be brand new. But of course, you just bought brand new machines. It's not like those machines appeared in a poof of smoke. Whether you bought physical assets from somebody else or you paid developers to write the code,
Yeah.
that almost certainly, a new assembly line costs more than repairing or keeping the old one in good repair. Shoot, I've lost my train of thought.
Yeah, well, and no, that's a great point. And it's not even like the new machines don't need maintenance. They still need, you still need to change the
Yes.
oil and all that stuff. So if, there's a minor update, but it's kind of an important one, right? You're going to do that update, even though it's a brand new system you've never actually put in front of customers. You're going to be maintaining it
Mm-hmm.
along the way. Otherwise, it's going to go into disrepair too. You're going to put out a framework that was brand new when you started, but now a year or two later, it's actually gone into sort of mini legacy mode.
Yeah.
And if you release that, you're sort of counting the months when you're kind of in a critical state and you have to put off some new feature that you never completed for that maintenance. So you're not getting away from this problem. You're hoping to leapfrog, and you're forgetting about all the things you never added and all the new maintenance that you still have to put into it. So
Right. That was the
it's
thing I
really,
was,
yeah. Mhm.
where if you didn't maintain your system the first time, why would I believe you, or what makes you think you're going to maintain the system the next time? And if you can't, like, that's one of my things. It's like, if you can't maintain your system, a new system isn't going to help you because you're not going to maintain that either.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not an immortal system. It's just a slightly newer version. Or, to be fair, it can unlock, right? There are things it will unlock, but there is a way also to integrate that usually into the old system such that it doesn't create so many new second order effects, so many new bugs that it totally, sort of disillusions everybody. Because when you rebuild that system and it takes you sufficiently long, I'm thinking 12 months plus, right? 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
3 years. The longer it goes, the worse it gets. Almost always, everyone's pretty disappointed with the results. That's been my experience, and I'm not saying just my teams. I'm just saying it from a perspective of, hey, this is a lot less functional than we expected. It's like, well, it took longer because there were all these edge cases that we had to build in, and every time we tested with the business team, they found this wasn't there, this wasn't there, it wasn't parity, right? That's kind
Mm-hmm.
of your red flag.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well,
and
just
at
the
the same
longer
time,
you're waiting for something, the more you expect of it.
yeah. And at the same time, the original engineering, beautiful design that they started with, all these edge cases kind of broke it a little bit. It's like, those planned cities,
Yep.
like Philadelphia is a great example. They have a beautiful city center and city plan. City Hall is right in the middle, right, in the square. You have two major streets sort of intersecting it. You have something kind of interesting in each corner. There's like a beautiful museum mile, right, in the north. And then what happens? Sprawl, right? You get, more
Okay,
people.
I was gonna
It's
say I don't know.
great. More people want to live there. So now you get, sort of janky things being built on the
Get more
outskirts, and
users.
Yeah, you
yeah, I
get
mean
more
suburbs,
users.
right? It's that's really, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we'll get more users, exactly. So that's the pattern, you get the sprawl, and it no longer fits this beautiful design. That's why you have to keep sort of, refactoring. And so where does it go wrong? Where does a rewrite go wrong? Because I hear this all the time. Hey, my rewrite worked. It's like, well, this was a 3-month effort. That's not so much a rewrite as an upgrade, as the thing you're supposed to be doing. It's a maintenance thing. And 3 months is maybe too big a chunk. There's a lot of things that can fail if you've waited that long to update. So you're still taking a risk. But, on the whole, it's not as nearly as bad a risk as a system you've had for a decade, and now you're taking 3 years or plus to rewrite it. That is 10 times more risk and second order effects that can go wrong. So you really do have to think about the scale of the problem.
And the
facing.
business might have changed in the 3 years that you're rewriting
Absolutely.
it, such that the new thing that you needed,
especially these days,
you built a system that solved your old problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have experienced that. I've been on a team where we're going to rewrite this thing. By the time you're done rewriting it, you don't even need that. Like, it's no longer appropriate for the business problem.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And some of the things that were brought up earlier too reminded me of like old conversations we had about like rewriting systems that you don't fully understand, which is why you run into those edge cases later. Like you're 80% done, then you realize, oh, there's this thing here that they expected to exist that we didn't even know about, and it's not test covered. And so it begs the question, why don't you just go through and document your old system so you fully understand it? And if you can go through and document your old system and fully understand it, you can test cover it and you can upgrade it. And that kind of defeats the purpose of the rewrite, because you better understand what was going on, which a lot of times is the argument for why we want to rewrite. It's just some old system that no one understands and is stupid and I can do it better. Well, then just understand it. Spend time understanding it.
Yeah. And with a small enough system, you can kind of do this manually. So rewrites aren't really a problem because you're just, again, you're probably too small for this to be a real issue. And I'm not even saying small in terms of customers. I just mean like the complexity and the frameworks. Like you could be serving a lot of customers with a very simple system and you're humming along. But a large enough system where testing is such a big deal, or maybe you've put artificial barriers where you're putting business people in the way to make sure that, some feature didn't break, your use case. That's now
can
it's
we
a
go
big
deeper
complex
on that?
system.
Because it's one interesting thing you said there that kind of just triggered some thoughts in my head, where if I'm rewriting a piece of software that I've written, or we're talking about, like, if you've got test coverage and whatnot, right? If I am capable as a developer of testing the system fully, whether I do it or not, that really increases my belief that I could rewrite it. But if I need to say, I'm going to write this software, like I'm going to talk to you, Mark, you're the executive, you're going to explain what this software does, and I'm going to take notes, and I'm going to go away and write this new thing, and then I need to get you to tell me if it's right. The amount of friction that back and forth creates,
it's unsustainable.
seems like it's unsustainable. It's huge. And the less often we talk, the worse the friction gets.
And the worst part is you're not even talking to the customer at that point. If you're just, in an echo chamber within your own org, yes, the executive might know this system really well, but ultimately is not the end customer and isn't necessarily seeing around corners of what the customer's seeing. The customer might not even realize, but someone in tune that's both seeing the customer side and the engineering side will pick up on, oh, so it sounds like what you're really looking for is this. Is that true? Let me know if I'm hearing that wrong. And they think, right? Is this true? Well, actually, here's what's really happening. You might be right about something, right? And then there's kind of a future focused conversation. It doesn't mean you go and, production build this whole thing, but now you're kind of seeing, what's coming up. Like, okay, let's do a test, right? And now you're collaborating. Whereas the executive may not want to go into the weeds. The executive might just be like, hey, here's how this system's been performing. Here's what maybe like a future thing is. But it really takes a lot of time to explore these things. And that, by definition, an executive is going to delegate that. So I want to be fair to the engineers, because it almost sounds like we're saying, hey, engineers are pushing this new system because their career uh, aspirations are high or whatever. And then I
Well, I
sort
felt
of
it was the other way
mitigated that.
around. We were blaming managers for
Right. So
not
we
allowing
mitigated that.
engineers to do the maintenance.
Exactly. We mitigated that by saying, hey, it's actually the business folks that aren't letting the engineers do their jobs. And although in a lot of cases that pattern seems to hold, is product can be the reasoned voice in the room, or product leadership can also have its own aspirations and say, hey, this is a mess. I hate working on the system. It's old and clunky. Same kind of,
Mm-hmm.
reasoning. Here's a bold new system. It's beautifully designed. Whatever framework is hot at the moment, right? And we also, kind of hooked it up to these this sort of customer usage tracking, and we built all these dashboards and stuff. And meanwhile, not one customer's seen it, or more importantly, not the right customer has seen it, right? The ones that are actually going to be driving the business. And those, although well-meaning, the results of that is also underwhelming, where there's a bigger gap than we thought between what we've built and what we're going to build. And then various people, kind of ears perk up and they go, okay, now I know what really we have to do. And it's not really the aspiration that's the problem in the end. It's the difference between what you build and what you validate. So honestly, testing automation can go a long way in helping you, but I've also seen where an engineer will spend months, building testing automation, and it's like, oh, we're 12% covered with this automation testing. It's been 3 months. Like, we can't go 2 years, 3 years building this automation where the use cases change faster than the building. So I do think that the newest tools in our stack, AI, can be of a lot of help there. It's not a magic fix. Maybe one day it will be, but there are a lot of tool sets, and you're always kind of going 80-20, 80-20. What's the least amount of effort I can put into this that actually does a good job, because there's always more to build.
Can we go a little bit more into the product-led vision? Because
Yeah.
I've seen it in multiple ways. I have seen product comes out and they're like, here's, I worked with design, here's a bunch of images, and we're going to show it to users and get their feedback, and that's great. And I have seen product doing something similar. Like, we've got a framework when Balsamic was a big thing. Like, we put together something really quick, and we're going to put it in front of customers, and we're going to see where they actually click and use it, and we're going to learn a lot. And then I've seen sort of the worst of all worlds, where they have an MVP built, and then they ignore the results of the MVP and say, we're going to build it anyway because we didn't do enough marketing and the customers didn't understand the thing that we were going to build.
Yeah. Sort
How
of
have you
doubling
seen
down
that play
on
out?
the bad thing, right?
Yeah. We
Yeah.
did a test and the test said no, so we did it anyway.
Yeah. No, that can happen. I call them leadership. Leadership comes in a lot of different flavors, right? But it's it's pure sales kind of thing, business owners. It could be product leadership, could be technical leadership. That these really terrible ideas come from, any number of those, or maybe a mixture of those. And it's the story they're trying to tell their bosses, right? Their CEOs or GMs or VPs. So it's really, again, it comes back to framing. It's kind of a failure of the imagination, because that story kind of tells itself. It's going to be new. It's going to be great. It's going to be better. It's hard to say, hey, we're going to go from 10% maintenance coverage to 20%. And, over a year or two, you're really going to see this thing go, right? It's like, we just tuned your car and it's like 10% faster. I mean, an enthusiast might appreciate it, but most people are like, okay, it's peppier, but that does nothing for me. What is, at the end of the day, you just have to ask yourself, what is the goal? Are you trying to, impress sort of on very kind of cosmetic things, or are you trying to build a performant, value producer for your customers? And just one more thought about that. I've seen those tests where, it's the A and B, right? Product team will show customers, hey, look at this old system. You know the old system, it's clunky, it's ugly. Here's a brand new screenshot of the new system. Look how much cleaner. And it sort of harkens back to the, I don't know if you guys remember the Pepsi versus Coca-Cola taste tests,
I
where,
remember those as a
people
kid.
went,
Yeah.
customers prefer the Pepsi, in a blind test, customers prefer Pepsi. Great. But the reason was it was sweeter. So that sip, yeah, it tasted better. But when you drank the whole can with your meal and sort of in the wild, right, where you really want it to perform, um, people still chose, the Coke or whatever, the brands were. I don't want to disparage one or the other, but the point is, it's you got to look at it in a holistic system, not just these little excerpts. And I think we do tell ourselves these sort of, these little fantasies that, okay, well, it didn't quite work the way we thought, but it's really this other thing that's going to make it better. And to your point, Jeffrey, they continue, and they're not being honest with themselves, the customers, or their teams, really, at the end of the day.
So, what do you advise people? Like when if you've come in and you've seen some of this, there's this desire to rewrite, whether it's because the developers want it or the managers want it or product wants it. I mean, I literally this morning published a blog post where I'm like, I will try to talk you out of it.
Yeah.
That is going to be if you hired me to talk about it, I'm going to try to talk you out of this thing. Guarantee. Don't hire me if you really are convinced that you need this. Where do you? How do you even start an engagement like that? What do you start it with the questions?
Yeah, no, I mean, you probably have a pattern in your mind, being an advisor, and the scenario is probably going to fit one of those, but you don't want to come in and be like, hey, I got the answer, right? You want to listen. You want to make sure that, there's a lot of people management, change management, to it. So you really
Mm-hmm.
want to listen, make sure that you understand the actual pattern occurring. There's a lot of, work that comes along with that, talking to various stakeholders. Um, but really, what your ultimate kind of tactic is going to be in that strategy is to draw the contrast between what the framework, what the story is that they're telling themselves, and what the more than likely is going to happen, what the real risk is. And that
Hmm.
actually aligns pretty well with step one of my peak fix approach, because you're really trying to attend and attune yourself to the return on investment and the risk. One of the easiest things to understand in a very nuanced situation is, hey, you're balking at dedicating 20% of your engineering resources to maintenance, but now you're telling me you're all in on the 100. Where's the disconnect? Right? Because your
Right.
team that you're dedicating is going to be 100% focused on this new product. So where's the disconnect, and how do you think that's going to turn out? What are you going to do when month 2, 3, 4 comes along and you have to do maintenance on the old system now that's now expiring, and you haven't released the new software to validate it against your customers, right? So you do the
Mm-hmm.
carrot and the stick. That's the stick you're describing to them and making sure that they really understand. But now the carrot, which is the thing we don't do as much, is creating the more real fantasy, the one that's actually going to potentially come true, and that's the stable, the peak fixed state, right? And a lot of companies do this,
Mm-hmm.
not nearly enough, but a lot of them do. The Googles, Apples, etc. Of the world, the Mag 7, whatever they're called nowadays, Fang used to be Fang, now it's Mag
It
7,
used to
and
be
many
Fang.
more. Adobe, right?
Yeah.
Spotify's doing a great job. Um, Shopify, all the new ones, Anduril, right? Where they are humming along, they're recognizing these problems ahead of time, and they're frankly outcompeting you. They're just much more responsive to their customers, and they understand that they don't have the full story. So they're constantly checking their assumptions. Doesn't mean that they don't build big, doesn't mean that they're not dedicating a lot of resources to grand visions. And I'll give you an example. Apple Maps, right? In
Mm-hmm.
September of 2012, Apple decided to ditch their very reliable mapping partners, and they decided to sort of stitch together their own network of, kind of providers. Led to a lot of inaccuracies.
It was a disaster.
Disaster. Led to Tim Cook having to, this was back in iOS 6, Tim Cook having to issue a public apology and then recommend competitors, right? Possibly a low in his career. So in the meantime, what did they do? Well, how did they fix it? Did they double down on something else? Kind of. They dedicated themselves to the new direction. They didn't come back to the old supplier with their tails between their legs, but they did the hard work. They deployed vehicles, literally rubber on the ground, right? Of mapping their own, creating their own database in neighborhoods that were not easily accessible, starting with the easier ones, of course. And, over many years, by the late 2010s, Apple was in a position to then redesign its software to take advantage of this more robust data set, and finally launched in 2020. This was 8 years. This was, billions of dollars. But guess why they pulled it off, even though it was billions of dollars?
They spent 8 years and had and billions of dollars?
Well, it's Apple. They're probably one
Apple.
of two companies that could have done it, right? That was 1% of their entire revenue, and it was a non-critical revenue driver. It's not like they screwed up the, magnesium casing of the iPhone or the, iPad or their MacBook Pros. That would have been disaster, right? That would have been.
Well, they probably would have gone with their tail between the legs in those cases.
Yeah, it would have been a recall, and they would have lost a ton of revenue. Tim Cook would have been fired. But this was a relatively small, so the scale is important here. It was huge, but relatively small to their top line and bottom line. They were able to pull it off and weather a decade-long storm. And actually, they still aren't on their own platform. These numbers are hard to get, but just kind of I really went into a rabbit hole trying to figure this out. I don't think that Apple Maps is today the dominant Maps platform on iOS. I could be wrong.
It's not.
But I don't think it is, even though it's a default.
Sure.
And Apple's constantly trying to redirect me into it, and I'm like, nah, I'm good with Google.
It still leads people across the street from me whenever someone tries to come pick me up.
Yeah. And it's great. It positioned all that boots on the ground hard work, now positioned them where they actually have a shot at winning market share as opposed to just going under.
So I think we should leave it there, because that's a great point of, you could do a rewrite, and if you're Apple, you could do it for billions of dollars in 8 years. And if you're not, perhaps you want to get in contact with you, Mark, and talk about your Peak 6 system, because that would be a better solution than 8 years and billions of dollars. So could you tell the listener, if they want to get in touch with you and learn more, how they would do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So go to mandau.co. And on that website, there's a contact us button. You can have a free consultation. You can test drive the system with a sort of a ROI and risk assessment. I'm actually this isn't available yet, but I'm working on kind of a self-service first step to make it, reduce the friction of that. So you can really kind of get a sense of where your blind spots are. And you can kind of move along and, see if it's a good fit. But if nothing else, it would be a personal win if you ask the question and then got a sense of a more realistic sense of where you are and the success potential of your strategy, whatever that is. That would be a big win for me. So
awesome. This has been super interesting, Mark. Thank you all for listening. I'm Jeffrey Sherman.
And I'm Isaac Askew. And
Jeffrey Isaac, thank you so much. Thank you, guys.